Good evening, everyone. We are welcoming you to Trinity-Pawling's Pride Perspective webinar series. Tonight's subject is our Center for Learning Achievement. So you're going to be hearing a lot about our super special program that helps our students learn with special needs. My name is Amy Foster. I have been here at Trinity-Pawling for a long time. We'll just say that. And I work here in the Gardner Learning Commons. I've been in the library for about 20 years. And I also am helping out now with the admissions department. So I'm pleased that you're able to join us. We have, as our panelists, we have Head of School Bill Taylor, the Director of the Center for Learning Achievement, Chris Gilman, Rachel Kellogg, who is a member of the department, Ashley Frost, and Jen Grahn, all members of the Center for Learning Achievement. So what you're going to hear is a lot of information about this program. And we'll start with you, Chris, just telling us what it's all about. Give us a summary and tell us how it works.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy. So the Center for Learning Achievement is near and dear, I would say, to all of our hearts that are on this call. Especially my amazing team down there. But, you know, it's a unique and offers unique and distinct programs, and it's tailored to students that have dyslexia, other learning-based differences, any sort of executive functioning issues. There's some students in there that need some help or lack some the English proficiency of the language. So some of our international students that may arrive at Trinity-Pawling, and under our CLA umbrella, which we like to call it, we have three of our more signature programs. We have the LEAD program, which offers 3 courses over a 2-year span in conjunction with some of the other classes that a student would take at Trinity-Pawling. EMP, which is our English Mastery program, follows a very similar structure. It offers 3 EMP courses over a 2-year span, in addition to sort of the student's other classes that he would take at Trinity-Pawling. And then we have our executive skills program, which is probably one of our newer programs. And I say new, probably 8 or 9 years now, but it's sort of definitely taken off. And that's a 1-year program. So, 1 course over that year in conjunction with some of the other classes that a student might take here. For the most part, some of our ESP students will need an additional year, but we sort of like to keep it at a 1-year sort of commitment, that we call it, and they're usually ready to sort of hit the ground running.
Great, thank you. One thing, just to backtrack a minute, I realize I neglected to mention using the Zoom platform, as we've all become familiar with it over the last couple of years. Please feel free to use the Q&A button on the bottom if you have any questions. I know some of our guests recognize some of the names, so hi to those I know. Submitted questions ahead of time, and we'll get to those. But if anything comes up, or if you have any comments, please feel free to use the Q&A button on the bottom. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. So how many kids are in the Center for Learning Achievement?
So our total numbers, say 52 students. Our breakdown is probably about 25 lead students, about 9 EMP, 9 or 10 EMP, and then 18 of our ESP. And that's just kind of the current students that are enrolled in our program. We have a number of other students that we sort of will consider graduates of our program that did their 2 years of LEAD or EMP, or their 1 year of executive skills, but it's still a member of the Trinity-Pawling community, but they're just not necessarily enrolled in sort of one of our signature programs, but still receiving the support of the program and of the team here, and making sure that they know that they sort of still come back and check in with us and need some help and guidance sort of throughout their TP journey. They still have it within us.
Terrific. Great. Thank you. So Bill, if you would address, how long has this program been at Trinity-Pawling, and how, where did it come about a little bit?
Yeah, well, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Two of the most distinctive aspects of this program include its longevity, and something that Chris has already alluded to, and that is sort of the curricular basis of this program. I mean, they are classes. This is not necessarily help with homework. We do that as a general practice. All our faculty are available for that. And that's one of the great advantages of a school like Trinity-Pawling, is that 90% of the faculty are living here right on campus with the students. But the Center for Learning Achievement, in its original form and iteration, began in the early to mid 1970s. We were really among the first prep schools to begin to create specific curricular solutions to language-based learning differences. And at the time, they were all sort of summarized by the term dyslexia. And it came about because Ted and Carol Nealon, who were faculty members here, Ted Nealon, teaching English, was realizing that there were kids in his class who were struggling with reading. And what he discovered, and what the school discovered, is that they were undiagnosed dyslexics. And Trinity-Pawling, being a very student-centered school, and never really wanting to give up on a boy, the Nealons went about and then researched, okay, how can, what's the most effective way to remediate a language-based learning disability? And the people who had been really successful with that were, the Orton Gillingham Institute, working with younger students in a highly phonics-based curriculum. And so the original program was actually called language retraining, because the key of the Orton Gillingham method is to reteach phonics in a very structured way. So the student is rebuilding language skills that may have not fully formed. But what the Nealons did is they adapted it for an adolescent population. So they used that curriculum, but then they said, okay, how could this work for a teenage population? Trinity-Pawling was one of the first schools to use computers to work to address these needs. And what the Nealons found is that computer technology actually enhanced the students' ability to sort of recapture a different foundation for the language. And it worked into the sort of the highly structured approach to doing this remedial work. And so this program began really, gaining momentum in the mid 1970s and the late 70s and 80s. And its appeal then and now comes from the fact that students could go to a Northeastern prep school that is, its entire program is college preparatory, and then be able to also address the specific learning needs of their language-based learning difference. And they would be in other classes with students not in the program for math, science, history, and so forth. And what the school then also realized is that, okay, for students who have this learning difference, they're trying to strengthen their command over the English language in terms of how the brain is engaging it. So we're not going to require them to have 3 years, 4 years of a different language. So students who are in this program even today are generally not taking a different language. Now, one of the key advantages of this longevity is that colleges and universities know of this, of our work and our leadership in this area. And they know that if a student who has come through this program has really received top-notch instruction that has been, really tested and refined and iterated over the course of 50 years. And that it's grown in an environment that is highly student-centered. And so not, every student with, every student learns differently. And every student who are here with learning differences will have slightly different needs. And this program has the flexibility. And what, as Chris mentioned, how we've adapted this is we use what we've learned in this to address executive skills function. We also learned that the phonics-based approach to introducing the language in chunks also works really, really well for international students who are really trying to enhance their command over the English language.
Great. Chris, can you speak to the specific curriculum that Bill mentioned, the different courses that take the place in some cases of the coursework that students would be doing?
Sure, and to build off of what Bill said, I mean, all the teachers in the CLA are Orton Gillingham trained. So we take, this modified Orton Gillingham approach, and we make it, we sort of use that specific curriculum. And obviously, like Bill said, no two students are the same. No two students come in, with the same educational testing or have the same sort of educational needs. So our goal, as a team is sort of to address and look at, what are the specific needs that each student sort of needs, and then how can we sort of fit them into our curriculum, but we're sort of giving them the foundation that they need to sort of have that academic success. So that's exactly what we do. So we start at the foundation level. So, over the, for example, for our lead and EMP students, they're going to start with the basics. So that means phonics cards, spelling rules, how, paragraph planning, parts of speech, sentence structure, but we build it and sort of ramp up as the year goes on, but making sure that they have sort of that foundation and all the sort of key components to sort of know how to be a successful student. And then for ESP, again, there's no two students that come with sort of the same sort of executive functioning issues, and we need to look at that, but we need to make sure that we're addressing all the needs and making sure that each student is finding success, and we're measuring that growth and we're seeing that growth. So Jen, for you, you teach reading comp and lead, so you have you teach reading comp and comp 1, so both lead and EMP programs. I mean, is there that curriculum, the foundation level, and as it ramps up throughout the year, but sort of making sure that we're building on the success that the students see early on?
Absolutely. So especially in reading comp, because it's such a small class size, 3 to 1 at the most, it allows for very personalized learning. So we're lucky enough to really meet the students exactly where they are and build on the skills they have. So if they need more focus on vocabulary, reading comprehension, phonics, we're able to start there and work our way up. It also, we stress the importance of keeping organized and building daily routines. So that will also allow them to see success with their other classes. Having such a small class size, we get to know the students, and we're able to communicate to all their other teachers as well what strategies might work for them or where they might find struggles, and support them any way they need, even if it's finding the audio book or getting a copy of their notes, or even taking some time towards the end of our curriculum to build a plan of action for them. So, but in our class, our reading comprehension does have its own particular curriculum of phonics, vocabulary, a lot of reading comprehension and spelling rules. So we build on that with both the EMP students as well as the students coming in with dyslexia, learning differences. And we're all going to be their point person for the whole entire time that they're here at TP. So we see them from the first day of reading comp, and we're still working with them until their graduation. So that's one class for year one. Do you want me to touch upon comprehension as well, Chris?
Sure.
Okay. That's also a small class size, but it goes a little further with 8 to 10 students. And we're working on parts of speech, beginning to recognize the elements of building an analytical paragraph that they learn in much more detail the second year of our program. Short story discussions, but again, it's personalized learning and meeting the students where they're at. So we're here to build on the skills they're coming in with and helping them get to the next level and working with them to not only succeed in our classes, but make sure that we're helping them succeed in all their other classes.
Great. And Rachel, I know you're sort of the seasoned vet here for executive skills. Is there, when you're looking at executive skills is a little bit different because there's a curriculum, but it's not a set curriculum because sort of every day is different. And every student is different, but sort of, the varying degrees of executive functioning challenges is wide, right? So how do you address sort of some of those needs and work with, those students individually throughout the year?
Absolutely. So again, based upon what Bill said and what Jen and Chris have already said, the classes are so individualized. The nice thing about with the executive skills program is it's a 2-to-1. So it's even smaller classes and we can really individualize it. Things bubble up throughout the year. So we may think we've mastered a skill and a month later, something might, the wheels might fall off the bus a little bit. And we need to just work on putting those skills back and reminding them and going over them. But again, we can go over with that flexibility, go over those things over and over again. I can individualize it where with one child, I might be working on a lot of organization, while another one, the other one in the class might have a huge struggle with study skills. And so, again, it's wonderful having those small classes. We work very closely with their other teachers and their other classes to make sure that they're also getting the support in there that they need. And we're really helping them learn how they learn, because once they leave our program, we're of course always there for them, but we're teaching them that they have to become their best self-advocates. And they need to be able to understand how they learn so that they can help drive the bus. They can help determine what's going to work best for them and what they're going to need more support with. Again, what Jen had said, we are their point people, which means we are the ones that everyone will come to when they need to understand the student a little bit more. And we're also the ones that will work with the school districts when there's any kind of testing to kind of help the child and the parent and kind of navigate all of that. It's a one-year program, but the students know that they can always come back to us, in which they do all the time. They'll come back in the beginning of the year and say, I really want to make sure that I continue to have a little bit extra time on that test. How should I go about and ask for that? Or Mrs. Kellogg, I'm kind of struggling with this teacher and I wanted to send this email. Could you read it for me first? So, we become the very trusted people that they have here because the classes are so small and they know that we have their back. Not that the other teachers don't, but because of this small class size, it becomes an atmosphere in which they trust us incredibly. There's an incredible trust that happens in here.
And 2 points that I just want to make that, Rachel and Jen both touched on it, but to sort of reiterate to those watching is, when the student does come in, regardless of which program he's sort of placed in, he is given a point person, and that point person will stay with him. But that person, to sort of bounce off of what Jen was saying, that will write a letter, and in that letter, it will list any sort of accommodations, learning strategies, anything that you know, that we found to be successful for the student in the past, right? If it's a second year or third year student, we keep a folder and a file and have all his testing. We have all his grades, his transcript, everything that we sort of, that we feel would be beneficial for his learning success here. And regardless of whether they're a program graduate or not, that point person will stick with them for his entire time here. So even if he's not a current ESP or a current lead student, his new set of teachers as a junior, his new set of teachers as a senior is going to get a letter. And every year that letter is individualized. If they're, you know, if the student had new testing over the summer, or if there's anything that's sort of bubbled up that again, we find would be helpful for the teachers to know, that sort of, you know, that gets added in and sort of, you know, rework. So it's not just the letter that we keep sending. It's like, yep, you know, John is a member of lead one, or John's a member of the ESP program. It's an individualized letter that is going to help support that student through that entire time here. So we are that safety net. We do like to sort of push them out a little bit and sort of on their own. And, you know, and, you know, like Rachel was saying, there might be some falls, there might be some knee scrapes, but our goal, you know, and what we do so well is that the student's able to sort of get back up, brush himself off and sort of, you know, rework it and hit the ground again, and know that he can come find any one of us at any time and sort of just, again, and find that support. And, you know, we tell this story all the time, but it's funny that, you know, if a student in one of our programs has a roommate who's not in one of our programs, it's oftentimes of how do I get into the program? Because they sort of see some of the strategies and tools and some of the learning methods that those students are coming back to the room with, and some of those study habits. And they're like, I think I need to be in the program. So it oftentimes becomes, our doors are always open, but it becomes sort of a revolving door with some students. So but that, you know, that point person will stay with that student through his entire time here.
Great, thank you guys. Ashley, did you have anything to add before I move on, or is there okay.
No, I think they covered.
Okay, good. So why do you think, Bill and Chris and anyone else who wants to jump in, why do we do this better than anyone else, I would say?
No, I'll start that one off. I love answering that type of question. I think for several reasons. I've already alluded to a couple of them. And Chris and Rachel and Jen and Ashley have just really talked about the curriculum. And that, you know, that is a key factor. But longevity is another, you know, another key aspect of this. Not only does that mean that we know what we're doing, but for nearly 50 years that has been part of the teaching and learning culture at Trinity-Pawling. So every one of our teachers you know, develops a very fluid understanding of how to teach students with learning differences. And when I started as a teacher here a few years ago, that's what I quickly learned. I quickly learned that I needed to differentiate my instruction. I needed to be certainly aware of all of my students' learning profiles. And you know, when you enter a classroom as a teacher with that kind of mindset that you're going to be student-centered and you're going to be attentive to different ways of learning, you naturally begin to differentiate your instruction, and you become far more versatile as a teacher. And so with a program in place here for nearly 50 years, you have that deep of a culture of educators that are familiar with this, that we're all not as trained as our colleagues in this particular program, but you know, teachers are learners, and we learn through experience of how to make sure that our teaching is reaching all of our students. And if we're having difficulty with this, we've got colleagues who are experts in this, and that we can go to them for specific advice on that type, you know, that particular student. And And then I would add a couple more aspects of this. For over 50 years at Trinity-Pawling, we've been using something that is now called the Effort Challenge. But this is a systematic way that the school recognizes and affirms the effort of each student here. And for boys that have come in with these specific learning needs, many of them have been told by teachers over the years, oh, you can get this, you just need to try harder. But they have been trying harder. And so when they come into this environment that the whole school is geared to encourage, but also recognize and affirm effort, it's like an extra catalyst, and it's a catalyst of confidence, and it's a catalyst of emerging self-awareness, as Chris and the others, my other colleagues were saying, of how do I become more knowledgeable about how I learn best, and how do I learn to advocate for myself. And so, those are some of the aspects, and I would throw in one more into this, that, this is a student-centered, primarily boarding environment with, as I said, most of our faculty living here on campus. And in that type of a situation, there's tremendous communication amongst the adults towards students. But it is a boarding environment, and it's an all boys boarding environment. And that's, that is important in the sense that boys here learn pretty quickly that they can have a pretty high degree of comfort with being vulnerable, and that type of environment, when you apply it to an awareness and a growth of your own learning style, that you're not afraid to be vulnerable about that in this type of environment. So all those factors go into why I think we do this better than anybody else.
Yeah, and I think, to piggyback off of Bill, I think the idea too of having this curriculum that obviously is in place, it gives us an opportunity to work with students and to address these needs. For me, and what I tell families, through the admissions process and when they're asking questions about the program, is that, we're able to address a need at any time that a student sort of arrives at Trinity-Pawling. And, some families are like, well, he's not there for 9th and 10th grade, or he's not there for 8th and 9th. That's fine. We've had PGs that have come in and needed lead 1, right? So they're only getting 1 year of the program, but just taking those 2 classes for that 1 year has changed their life and changed their college trajectory and changed how they approach school. And it powers them. They feel success. They have success. They feel confident as a student. Maybe some of these for the first time in their 12 years of learning. So the ability to do that, and the ability to look at a student, see what their needs may be, address those needs, and sort of start to see them have some success and sort of gain that confidence. That's huge for boys, and especially in education and how boys learn. And for that to be able to happen, and for us to see that as often as we do, that's, to me, is one of the most important things in what we do so well, is having the ability to say, you know what, we'll take that 9th grader, we'll take that PG, we'll take at any point and sort of meet them where they are, address the needs, and sort of start to see the pieces fall into place for them, and just watch, the smile on their face, and watch the confidence. And, again, for that first time, maybe for a lot of these students, they're seeing that academic success. And I think as adults, and for teachers, just empathy, right? And for the students, and to see, exactly what, like Bill was saying, forces you to maybe sort of think creatively as a faculty member, but just against empathy, and to empathize with the students, and sort of to see the struggles and know, like, okay, like how can we fix this? How can we readdress it and sort of open your eyes to, you know, different type of learners and different kind of learning strategies that may help. And it's really important.
Great, thank you. So we've spoken about dyslexia, language-based learning disability, and some executive skills. What about and you've spoke about the executive skills program being a relatively new offshoot. What other ways do we work with nonverbal learning differences?
We've had some students in the past that had some nonverbal learning differences, you know, but prior to arriving to Trinity-Pawling, every student is evaluated and assessed and will be placed into one of the specific programs that we feel will best serve their academic needs. And it's important, you know, nonverbal learning differences would be addressed sort of naturally through the CLA and through the CLA curriculum, and, you know, the visual, spatial, the organization, the recall, you know, the repetition, all of that will sort of be addressed and supported through one of the distinct programs, depending on the degree and where we feel, you know, that student would be supported and would see the most sort of opportunity and success for growth.
And I would add that, you know, because of that testing based analysis that's part of the admissions process, if we feel that our program's not going to be able to address a student's learning needs, then we're not, you know, we're not going to be, we won't accept that student into the school or the program if we feel that we can't successfully address that. And we'll, you know, we'll do that with, you know, with all sorts of recommendations to, you know, here's other resources for you in that process, because we want to be able to certainly be successful in this, and not all learning differences are going to be able to be fully addressed by the program we have, but we know that, and that's also comes with 50 years of doing.
Right. Good. So what is the hoped for progression, Chris? If you could give us a boy comes in whatever grade, the comp one, you know, the whole.
That's a great question. And I'm going to tag Ashley in for this one and to help me out a little bit, but the CLA and a student in one of our sort of signature programs, their growth may be measured on different scales. It's not, you know, in some classes, it's easy to sort of see the growth. It's, you know, what was your grade in September compared to what was your grade in May? But for some of our students, that doesn't always work. And their learning curve and their pace is completely different. The executive skills piece, like Rachel was saying, you know, you may think you mastered one task and then we sort of, you know, hit a little bit of a roadblock and we got to sort of, you know, backtrack and reassess and sort of reteach and work through that again. But so we measure growth and progression sort of on the full scale, right? It's not just the academic piece, but it's the social piece. It's how you are as a community member. It's, you know, it's how you are at self-advocating. Are you know, are we seeing growth there? Are you becoming more comfortable with learning, you know, about you and about your learning needs? And can you then sort of, you know, talk to your teachers and to ask for help and to sort of self-advocate in that way? So, you know, it's, we sort of, the progress is different, and the progress may not be, you know, we may not see it in a month, we may not see it in a year. But it's certainly the growth and progression is there. And Ashley, you sort of have a unique perspective, I think, because you're, you know, you're a dorm parent, you're an advisor, you teach, you know, reading comp and ESP. So, you know, what does that growth look like for you? I know that, you know, you have students that have graduated from ESP but, you know, and are doing really, really well right now. And, you know, we were just talking about a student the other day. So what, you know, what does that feel like for you? Obviously, all of us love success, but, you know, what does it feel like for you when you are able to, you know, see that student and see how well he's doing?
Yeah, I think, like Chris said, measuring the student's growth can happen in a month, but it can also happen in the X amount of years they're here, 2, 3, 4 years. But it always is such a proud moment when they come to you and the student says, you know, remember when I couldn't get all my homework done. I'm taking myself now to the library, and I'm during study hall, and I'm doing my homework, and they have no lates on their homework, so their grades are improving because they're actually reaching out for extra help. And I think Rachel, Jen, and I, with our executive skills kids, do a lot of work at the beginning with our students. Make sure you email your teacher, make sure you ask for extra help, make sure you go to extra help. There's a lot of gentle nudging, sometimes more than gentle nudging, that happens. Some students reluctantly will go to evening study hall outside of their room. And so if we assign them to evening study hall, it's not a fun time the first little bit, but I have a student right now who takes himself to evening study hall in the library because he realized, having been assigned there, that it is a quiet, distraction-free place, which he prefers to use over his dorm room. So, being a dorm parent and working with students also who aren't in our program, I see how distracting the rooms can be. And I feel like that's one of the important skills for them to learn going off into college, that there are a lot of distractions, but their academic time is important. And removing themselves from a distracted place, like a library or somewhere where they can get their homework done and seek extra help is important. So, I mean, there's lots of different examples of kids succeeding. And I think we've all, Chris mentioned the confidence, and I think both for executive skills and reading comp, the most important thing is building their confidence. A lot of the kids come in here thinking that they're not smart because learning's difficult for them. So having what Rachel said too, teaching them about their learning differences, identifying what those are and how to learn strategies to deal with their challenges, definitely helps them grow greatly while they're here. And after a student does graduate, things still pop up, things still, they struggle with, and we all have students come in and ask for advice, and a lot of times we're able to talk it through with them, and they can help come up with a solution on their own. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
I just want to
yeah.
just backtrack a little bit and return to something that Chris mentioned about the boys who are not in the CLA, which is the vast majority of the students. Sometimes we'll seek out these teachers in the CLA, for assistance, but those students who are not in this program, they benefit from the program here because of things that I've mentioned and it's been said already, but it's worth repeating because the teaching is differentiated, and we all as teachers here, have learned a lot of really good techniques to address students' learning that are going to benefit all students.
Absolutely.
And we have a special place, I think, on campus in our academic building. It's called the Allen Reading and Writing Room. That is a space where it's staffed throughout the day. It's staffed in the evening during study hall hours by a faculty member, and it's a place that is often quiet. It's distraction free, but it's a place for students to sort of pop in if they have questions, sort of sit there if they need to get their work done, if they're having they're in between classes, or they just need a little bit extra time. A lot of the CLA team will sort of post up in there during that day and sort of just be there as a resource. And that may be extra help. It may count as just a check-in for students. It may be a place where a student is making finishing a test or making up any assignment, but it's a space that sort of allows our students, both program and non-program students, to sort of go in there and maybe get some of that additional support, or maybe just sort of have a check-in with one of us. We'll spend some time again meeting with students who may not be in the program, but a history teacher or English teacher may reach out to us and just say, hey, Chris is struggling with some organization, but he may not be in our program. So can you meet with him period 5? And oftentimes that will take place in that Allen reading and writing room where, we'll just sort of sit down and say, okay, let's look at your notebook. Let's look at your backpack, and, just maybe getting help, get student back on track a little bit. And he may not be a program student, but it's sort of the resources of the CLA and the resources that are provided for our CLA students are open to everybody, both faculty and students. But it's sort of a place where I think, a lot of students know that all our doors are open, and oftentimes we'll pop in and sort of say, hey, I need some help, or what do you think about this? Can you reread the email, or etc. So there are a number of different ways that sort of the student body, which is probably about 80% of students who are not in our programs, also benefit from having the CLA on campus and having the CLA around.
For sure. It's not a members only club. Absolutely. Bill and Chris, I heard both of you mention the word empathy, I think more than once. Can you explain how that fits into our overall learning environment here?
Sure. I mean, I look at empathy as being integral to the process of helping young people develop their own sense of self-awareness. I mean, it's hard to have that as an objective of, that these young people, these teenagers are really going to, through their experience at Trinity-Pawling, discover who they are, what their gifts and talents are, what they like to do, how they learn. That's all important in self-awareness. It's hard to say you're going to really put that as a high objective, which we do, if you're also not empathetic as an adult, as a teacher, of what is it like to be a student in my class. I teach a class. I ask myself that all the time. Are they understanding what I'm trying to teach? Are they understanding? Am I communicating clearly? Could I be doing something better? All of that sort of self-awareness from me, and for any teacher, comes from a place of empathy. And so I think it's an essential skill in any school. I think if you're talking about students who have had challenges with learning, it is all the more essential. And sadly, I think in the larger school world, empathy is highly lacking in many schools. Many schools are teacher-centered, not student-centered. And if you are going to be a student-centered school, you have to be empathetic.
And I think for program specific and CLA specific empathy, I think it's and Rachel, Ashley, and Jen, feel free to chime in here, but I think it's sometimes that we as teachers, even in the program, sometimes have to hit stop, pause, and just sort of take a step back, and like Bill was saying, and look at, we can't become so hyper focused on meeting our curriculum, because every day is different. And I think if we're looking, back to the growth question too, I mean, if we're looking at, we need to get to point X of our curriculum by this date, we're in trouble, because when we're looking at students and we're admitting students and we're looking at their testing and we're evaluating them, it's not always paints the perfect picture of who that student is and what their needs may be. So, to have sometimes to stop and have empathy and just say, we need to look at the bigger picture and just, this is not working right now. And having the ability to sort of be able to change on the fly, or sort of to, take a step back and say, okay, we're going to veer off. We're going to focus a little bit more on of the reading comprehension piece, or we're going to focus more on, academic executive skills, as opposed to, or maybe we need to circle back and look at something else. So, we have tons of empathy in our program and looking at the students. But Jen, Ashley, and Rachel, feel free to.
I was just gonna piggyback on what you were just saying, Chris. I also find that because of the intimate setting of our classes, that the students tend to share empathy for each other. And I've noticed quite a few different times that they gain an understanding, like, oh, you struggle with this too. And it's the first time that not only have they recognized that among a peer, but it's so mainstream to hear. A teacher in history is providing audio for the whole class. So they never feel isolated. There is this whole group, and the fact that Ashley, Rachel, and I have our classrooms right next to each other, they see everybody coming and going in these classes, that for the first time, it's a feeling of empathy towards one another, and that they know these struggles and challenges, they're never alone. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, they're not getting pulled out of the, regular classroom and taken to another. Yeah, no, I would totally agree. All right, I'm going to just look at the Q&A for 1 second. I think we answered the first question for executive function issues support after the 1-year program. I think we're pretty clear that it continues until they exit on graduation day, and even afterwards they are known to come and write for letters for a new college or something like that. So I think we've answered that question. But also, how does the school decide which program or programs a boy needs to be? And I think, Chris, you pretty much did that through the testing. And if you want to add to that.
Sure. And I just, we won't place a student in a program if we don't have any sort of testing, on them. So whether that be an IEP or a 504, or certainly like a neuropsych or testing, we'll look at that, and there'll be sort of, we'll address a number of issues, and obviously if it's up to date, and look at their transcript and recommendations. We like to meet with the family when they arrive here in the admissions process, and just sort of make sure that we're talking about the program and everything is sort of specific to what they may need. But oftentimes, and again, we're not always 100% right. So it's sometimes there's students that will be placed in lead, and sometimes it's actually they need more of the executive skills piece, and we're able to sort of, because of our smaller class sizes, we do have to cap off the number of students in our program, but we sort of do have the ability to manipulate and make a hybrid curriculum if we sort of need a student that maybe needs a little bit of both, or there's maybe placed in a different section or in the wrong program. But pretty much through the admissions process, there'll be the testing will be read, and sort of, again, it's always great to meet the families and to talk to the students, and sort of hear their side of it, and figure out a little bit more about their learning style and their learning strategies, and see how we can help them and where we can support them.
Great, thank you. Bill, I think you and I collectively have been here, enough years to see a number of successful graduates of this program. They very often, in my experience anyway, are the leaders of the school, the prefects, and go off to do wonderful things. What kind of examples of success can you share with us?
Sure. I think there are so many examples of success, even when the students are here. The many students who that after a year or 2 years just being here are far more confident than they were when they arrived. They are proud of the work they're doing. They have a sense of confidence in their academics. They have a greater self-awareness of how they learn. That's all part of what success looks like. I always say to the faculty that one of the best aspects of my job is working with alumni, and because I spend so much time with alumni, I know just from hearing their stories that many of the seeds that were sown at their time of Trinity-Pawling didn't really germinate until they were in college or even out of college. But they, as adults, and self-aware adults know that it came from Trinity-Pawling. You know, whatever they're identifying as success or achievement, they will link it back to their time at Trinity-Pawling. I had lunch with an alumnus from the 90s just over the summer, and he ended up, you know, he was in the program, ended up going to the same college that I went to, and which is a liberal arts college, lots of reading, lots of writing. And all we talked about over lunch, we talked about a lot of things, but we talked a lot about books that we were reading or had read. And he's a voracious reader. He just reads all the time. And, you know, and that wasn't how he was when he came in as a ninth grader. And so many of the students who have been in the program or are currently in the CLA, they come to Trinity-Pawling already somewhat versed in some sort of compensatory technique that they have learned. But because of that, because they've had to develop their own compensatory strategies, and then they learn new ones here, when they graduate from Trinity-Pawling and they go to college or they're in the workforce, they're like experts at compensatory strategies, which makes them very, very successful in any organization. It makes them very good leaders. And they are also really, you know, tend to be highly creative thinkers because they are thinking about things in a different way, which makes them very valuable in the workforce. And so many are graduates of Trinity-Pawling, but also graduates of the CLA are highly successful in whatever career they've chosen for themselves. And the careers run the gamut. But they're successful because they've applied what they've learned here. And they look around and they're in a very small pool of people that are doing that. And you know, they attribute that to their success.
Wonderful. Great. Well, we have just a few more minutes, but maybe we can talk a little bit about the how the school, we've talked about how the CLA relates to the school. How does the rest of the school relate and strengthen the work of the CLA?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I've talked about sort of the effort challenge and the role that plays. I think the all boys aspect strengthens the work done in the CLA. But we're right now in what we call our winter session. It's these 2 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas that don't lend themselves well to a block of traditional learning. You know, the boys just came back from their Thanksgiving break yesterday, and they will leave for their Christmas break 2 weeks from tomorrow. And so that's a short amount of time that they can be looking ahead and be anticipating their next break or being at home. And so what we did 3 years ago, we decided to use this time in a different way. So all the students in the school right now are involved in some sort of project-based learning that are all relate to our practicum. And so the middle schoolers, the 9th and 10th graders are all doing interdisciplinary projects. The juniors are doing a junior collaborative challenge where they have to solve a real world problem and provide answers in a timed and filmed presentation. And then the seniors are off doing an independent study project with an advisor. And so we're doing project-based learning. Well, project-based learning, active learning is really appealing for a student who has had challenges of learning in a traditional classroom. And we know that about boys in general. They learn better when they're active. They learn better when they're doing something, when they're seeing relevance in something. And that's especially true for students who have learning differences. And then we've also, we're in our second year of developing these institutes of active learning. So we have different institutes that focus on leadership, citizenship, environmental stewardship, and entrepreneurialism. And these are all done outside of the classroom. And this is how we spend if not most of our Saturday learning time, instead of being in traditional classes. Well, those opportunities to learn in different ways, are just going to be, they're going to enhance and augment the overall learning of a student who can working in a traditional classroom, takes more out and is more challenging. You unlock the time out of a traditional classroom and open up the learning venue to lots of different areas and ways. It's going to really be a highly motivational opportunity for these students. And it's also important because the faculty of these students who are in the CLA, they can see a whole different side of how that student is learning when you take them out of the traditional classroom and put them in a project-based learning environment or something outside where you're learning about leadership or the environment. And we get to see a different side of them and their learning. And then it's a good reminder for classroom teachers to realize that a lot of important, influential learning happens outside of the classroom.
Absolutely. That's a great segue to what I was going to mention, and that is the recording of this webinar as well as other webinars that specialized, that we spoke about the practicum, the institutes, are all on our website, and I'll put the link in the chat. But please do, if you're interested in more information about the practicum and the institutes and the other webinars that we did, please visit that page. Put it right in the chat now, and you can find this one there shortly. This is the end of our webinar series for the fall of 2022. 2022 is coming to an end. So I encourage you to tune in again. Bill will be hosting a series of fireside chats over the winter time. So tune into the schedule. You'll all receive some information about those, I'm sure, as well. But I wanted to say thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you had your questions answered. I'll check Q&A one more time. It doesn't look like we have anything else. Does anyone else, Bill, would you like to sign us off?
Well, thank you all for spending some of your valuable time with us this evening. I want to thank you to my colleagues for spending your valuable time with everybody this evening. And certainly if we can help with any other questions about Trinity-Pawling, in any area, please don't hesitate to reach out to our admissions office. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thanks so much for coming tonight. Bye. Thanks, guys.